Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad. Tehami. Today is the second anniversary of the takeover of Kabul by the Taliban as the international troops were withdrawing from the war-torn Afghanistan. This time around with the very swift takeover by the Afghan Taliban of the presidential palace in Kabul with little resistance from the Afghan National Security Forces made this largely a bloodless takeover. It was generally understood at that time that the Taliban this time around would be different from what they used to be during their previous regime. They were also being seen, this version of the Taliban was being seen as a 2.0 version of the Taliban, especially they had made certain promises and commitments to the international community in the form of the Doha peace deal. The first and the foremost promise they made to the international community was not to allow the Afghan soil to be used by any terror group or a militant outfit to carry out terror attacks against the US and its allies. Also, they had promised to form an inclusive government over there in Afghanistan. There was also an expectation from the Afghan Taliban this time around to uphold the human rights. But as far as the first promise is concerned of not allowing the Afghan soil to be used for any terror activity by any terror group or any militant outfit, the regional countries in particular, and also we specifically when we talk about Pakistan, seemed concerned regarding the Afghan Taliban's ability to take concrete measures against the banned outfits which were having sanctuaries on the Afghan soil and which were operating from the Afghan soil, particularly against Pakistan. There had been a resurgence of terrorism in Pakistan in the recent past, particularly in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province and in Balochistan province. Pakistani authorities have repeatedly been asking the interim Afghan authorities to fulfill their commitment as per the Doha peace deal and take a concrete action, particularly against the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. On the contrary, we saw there were denials from the interim Afghan authorities of the presence of the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan on the Afghan soil. As I have already mentioned, there was also expectation from the Afghan Taliban they would be upholding the human rights, but we've also seen in the last 2 years they've imposed ban on women employment and girls education. This particular ban has also garnered huge criticism and condemnation from the international community and also the United Nations. In today's program, we are going to try to understand the course of the last 2 years after the Taliban took over Kabul in largely what was seen at that time a bloodless takeover, what they'd been up to, and especially in terms of their commitments to the international community. And the first and the foremost was not to allow the Afghan soil to be used by any terror outfit. What have been the concerns of Pakistani authorities in the last 2 years and how the Afghan authorities have responded and reacted to that so far. For understanding that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Mr. Umer Khan Ali Sherzai, former ambassador. Mr. Umer, thank you very much for your time, for being with us, sir, on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. And also in the studio, we are being joined by Brigadier Retired Shahid Jagir, Senior Analyst. Brigadier Jagir, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. And also on Skype at the same time, we are being joined by Mr. Hassan Khan. He's expert Afghan affairs. Mr. Hassan Khan, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Mr. Umer Sherzai. How do you see the last 2 years when the Taliban took over Kabul? How do you think the Afghan authorities have fared so far?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think the expectations from the Taliban were very high at the time when they took over, but they never came to our expectations of stopping the TTP people from attacking the Pakistan soil. I would like to say that it could be partly their failure because of the insufficient resources that they have at their disposal. And you also know that lots of funds of the Afghan government have been confiscated by the US government and then not being released. So I think partly the problem lies with other actors as well, that the Taliban have not been able really to control the TTP people. But I would like to say that it was more the fault of our previous government, Imran Khan's government, who signed a deal with TTP people and released all those terrorists who were in Pakistani jails for heinous crimes. But Imran Khan never consulted his country advisors and took a unilateral decision of releasing all those terrorists, which now resulted in these cross-border attacks by the TTP insurgents in Pakistan. I personally feel that instead of raising objections on the Taliban, we should try to increase their capacity of fighting these terrorists. What they are lacking is that their capacity, they don't have money, they don't have those sophisticated weapons to fight with the TTP leaders. Therefore, I think they have not been able to control. This is, but our government and all the governments around, including US, they should try to support the Taliban to act upon their promises which they made to the international activity. You should enable them to take proper action. But without having resources, it is never possible
Mr. Sherzai,
to control their activities.
You mentioned two different aspects of this particular problem and the resurgence of terrorism. The dialogue with the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan during the previous government of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, you hold Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf's policy at that time responsible for the resurgence of terrorism. And that is what we see. That was exactly stated by NECTA in its briefing to the Senate Standing Committee also, that dialogue with the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban emboldened it and to carry out terrorist acts here in Pakistan. When we talk about, as you mentioned, that there is a lack of resources when we talk about the Afghan Taliban, that's why they weren't able to take that concrete action against the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. They were not in hold of the sophisticated weapons also, that is what you mentioned. But when we see the number of findings that when the attacks in Pakistan are carried out, the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan and the Afghan nationals who were involved in those attacks are carrying the very sophisticated weapons which were of course left over by the international troops. So if the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan can get hold of such sophisticated weapons, why can't the Afghan Taliban could hold those weapons in their control?
Well, I think the Taliban were also there. They also got the opportunity to get hold of some of those weapons, and therefore they are using those weapons against Pakistan. And mind you that India is there to provide all these insurgents all kind of sophisticated weapons. India has always been trying to destabilize Pakistan, even in Karzai's time. And even after Karzai, all the successive governments were provided with massive weapons and money and everything, and allowed their soil to be used against Pakistan. So, we should not forget that India is another actor who is playing to destabilize Pakistan, and they are providing these weapons and resources to the Taliban. So, I would personally not blame the Taliban for not being able to control the activities of the TTP. I think it is high time that instead of blaming Taliban, we should sit with them and discuss the modalities, provide them the required resources, and reach to an honorable and a workable solution to bring an end to all this cross-border terrorism.
Right, your point is well taken. Brigadier Jagir, how do you think the Afghan interim authorities have fared in the last 2 years after they took over Kabul? As Mr. Sherzai has mentioned, that there is a lack of resources. Perhaps there was the main reason in its ability to take those concrete actions against the banned outfits over there, particularly banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. But the question is that when they were striking a deal with the international community, especially the US, the Doha peace deal, were they not in realization of the ground realities? Once they come into power, there is going to be a lack of resources, and the US, as it froze the Afghan assets, so there could be some repercussions regarding after their takeover. So were they not prepared at that time before taking over?
Look, I take your questions from 3 points of view. One is Taliban, the interim government of the Taliban, and second is the foreign actors, as respected ambassador has said, and third is that our in-house efforts to control that. Now, as far as the Taliban's interim government of the Taliban is concerned, and Mullah Habibullah was the head of that, I think enough margin has been given to interim government of Taliban to harness the TPP. You know, 2 years is a hell of a time. They are neither acting severely against them, nor they are allowing joint mechanism with the Pakistan to materialize. And third, yes, we give due leverage to this thing that they do not have resources. But in a culture like Afghanistan, where you know, it is very introvert, you know each other, even in the village. Anybody moving out who does not belong to village at night, he is picked up. Now, that is keeping all this perspective in mind. I think there is a little, I personally feel there is a little lack of interest on the part of the Taliban to harness these TPP individuals, those who attack Pakistan, because they know, the TPP people exactly know that the relations between Afghan interim government and Pakistan should not be a brotherly relations, and it helps their purpose. Now, coming on to the foreign assistance, yes, as honorable ambassador has highlighted, not only India. India is the main player which is acting perpetuating the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan in terms of arms, ammunition, intelligence and other things. There are many other actors also. So, we have to see this thing, that all those who are there, Pakistan has given credible information to the international community, but unfortunately they are looking toward the other side. The third aspect of this is the internal mechanism. that has to be set in. You know, I was very happy to listen to the present interim Prime Minister when he made his speech regarding the counter-terrorism, a new wholesome approach. At least there is somebody who has that vision and all. So, we need to do 4-5 things immediately. Number one, NACTA should be made operational. Operational in the sense not people sitting in the air-conditioned offices. They should have troops, they should have weapons, they should have mobility, they should have intelligence. Then all these 4 components should be combined at the center level, where the fighting actual action might have to be taken at the provincial level, but it has to be coordinated.
So, Jagir, I seek your pardon for the interjection over here. Was NACTA not established for this very particular purpose of a better coordination at the federal level?
I don't say. Look, if you see the word, the modern word, no army, conventional army fights the terrorism. You talk of America, you talk of Russia, you talk of Europe, you talk of European Union. They have the troops. The troops are highly trained, because conventional war and low intensity operations are 2 different dynamics of warfare. Unless you understand the difference between the conventional war and the low intensity conflict, you cannot arrive in the same correct solution. Second thing I would like to highlight over here, that as I told you, resources, give them a force, give them weapons, give them mobility resources in terms of road mobility, in terms of air mobility, give them the intelligence resources, give them the cyber resources. Unless you do this, it will not. And the intelligence, you know, intelligence is a game of puzzles. You know, a small information might complete the puzzle, you know, and a timely reaction of that. Second thing is this, as again, you need to revive your law. You know, human rights are for the humans, not for the terrorists. Why these people have run away from the jails? What the judiciary has done about it? You know, then you have to make an effort that that the 10 million Afghan refugees which are living in Pakistan now, is the 2 years that their country is liberated, so-called liberated, they should go back.
Right. Right. Let me bring in Mr. Hassan Khan also into the discussion. I'll come back to this point of, you just mentioned the issue of refugees also. Mr. Hassan Khan, what's your understanding of the last 2 years? How do you think the interim Afghan authorities, the Afghan Taliban have fared so far, particularly in upholding their commitments that they made to the international community, especially when we talk about the concerns of the regional countries regarding the terror outfits operating from the Afghan soil?
Thank you very much. I think, look, at the moment, as at the moment, we need to take a holistic view of this TTP missions are the terror networks, the terror syndicates operating in Afghanistan. But I think Afghanistan are committing certain mistakes by following the footsteps of Pakistan's in the past. Pakistan was in a denial mood, sanctuary in Pakistan, and all the things are external, not internally. Pakistan is okay. So I think at the moment we look at the Islamic policy. They are in a denial mode. They are denying that TTP is not existing in Afghanistan. It's Pakistan internal problem. why they are doing it. I think this is a debate we have to talk in the program. Other issue for Pakistan. I think Pakistan also, as a Pakistani, I'm thinking that we are also committing a mistake in a way that we are externalizing this issue completely. We are taking the TTP issue as a cross-border terrorism. We are not looking at the internal security dynamics, internal security problems of Pakistan. Yeah, we are facing it home. So I think Pakistan's need to take stocks. Look at this TTP issue both as an external threat, as a cross-border terrorism, and also internal law and order situation. Because so far, as a Pakistani, I'm not convinced that we have taken. Yes, kinetically, our security forces are chasing them. They are embracing martyrdom. They are offering ultimate sacrifice for the country, especially our Jawans and our officers, especially the police. They are offering their ultimate sacrifices. But as for the policy is concerned, countering this TTP or this militancy issue, I think by coming up with a powerful narrative, I think we need to address the extremism also. We need to strengthen the police also. So far, we haven't done it. I am from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. I know the condition of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa police. So I think all the time they are waiting for the security forces to come forward and help them. The reason is they are making that sophisticated weapons which the terrorists have. They are lacking the technology which the terrorists are using. They are lacking the level of training which these terrorists have. So we need to first take steps internally, and then I agree with the panel that we have to take this issue up with Taliban instead of going for the loudspeaking diplomacy. I think we need to open formal channels with the Jamaat-e-Islami and convince them that, look, this is not only the TTP or the other terrorist syndicates which are operating from Afghanistan. Blame is not only coming from Pakistan. The UN report, the recent UN report also pointed out to the existence of a number of terrorist networks like Al-Qaeda, ISKP, ETI, Uzbekistan, Islamic Movement, Tajikistan, etc. So there are a number. The UN is also referring to it. So we need to take especially the Jamaat-e-Islami. We need to approach them in a very cool way instead of blowing hot before. I think this issue of cross-border terrorism, it needs, I think, a very, what you call it, politically using other means of resolutions, instead of, we are not, I think, first in diplomacy, we need to go to opt for second and third diplomacy, also involve the parliamentarian, involve the elders, involve the media men. So I think only then we can come up with with something positive.
Right, Mr. Hassan, your point is well taken. Let me go back to Mr. Sherzai. Mr. Sherzai, when we talk about the concerns, as Mr. Hassan Khan has very comprehensively said, that we take it as an internal matter. At the same time, we need to enhance the capacity of the police, particularly in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. Also, that is what we had seen the former Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif also offering the then provincial government of Pakistan Tehrik-e-Insaf at that time of getting that support from the federal government in order to enhance that very capacity. Now, when we talk about the UN also expressing its concerns in its back-to-back reports, that the banned militant outfits had the liberty of action over there, and that is what has been repeatedly expressed as a concern by the Pakistani authorities. So that pretty much establishes that the sanctuaries are present over there, and as per the Doha peace deal, they need to take action against the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, also as they had been taking action against the IS Khorasan.
First of all, I would like to facilitate the Afghan Taliban for their second anniversary of their takeover. I would honestly agree with Hassan Khan. He rightly pointed out that we have to manage our affairs internally as well as externally. The problem lies with us that we are not managing ourselves internally and trying to put as much the blame on the external side as much
at that
we
time,
can.
Mr. Sherzai, when please go
just
ahead.
my own feeling is that at times we go out of the way to raise objections, like the human rights issue. Tell me, what country has not human rights issues, including Americans, including Israel, including India, who don't have the human rights issues? But when it comes to Afghanistan, we are all very vocal about raising our voice against the Afghans. We should not go into their internal politics. Let them sort out their matters. We are nobody to fight the human rights issues. We have our own problems. Let us get into our own problem and solve our problems. The first and foremost thing, that we say that foreign policy is the first line of defense. What I can see today is that we have not been able to position proper people in Afghanistan to take up all these issues at a diplomatic level with the Taliban leadership. When I was in Kandahar during Mullah Umer's time, believe me, any request from the government of Pakistan, I would convey that within hours to Mullah Umer, and the action was taken then and there, and there were no issues, no cross-border problems and nothing. The problem is that we have not been able to position proper people. Now, as you rightly said, that I am very grateful to our new interim Prime Minister, who is a bold person. He is a Pashtun and he knows the entire dynamics of the Pak-Afghanistan relations. I think with his vision and with his boldness and with his courage, this problem will get resolved. We should not make a very hue and cry of this. Let's sit down and sort out these matters across the table.
During this resurgence of terrorism in Pakistan, Pakistani authorities had been engaging with the interim Afghan authorities on different levels. We saw high-level delegations visiting Kabul also. Then most recently we saw the permanent representative of Pakistan the special representative of Pakistan to Afghanistan also went over there. But on one side we see assurances coming from their side, and on the other, the very next day we see the denials coming from the spokespersons also.
That is what I am saying, that I think we are lacking on the diplomacy side in Afghanistan. And we must look into this problem again and position proper people who can talk to Taliban, who knows their culture and their, now our present ambassador over there, he can't speak even a word of Persian or even a word of Pashto.
Right.
So how you are going to negotiate with the people
Jagir, what's your understanding of this?
whose language you don't understand, whose culture you don't understand? That is not our fault. So we should set as I said, our own home in order first, and then raise fingers towards others.
Right. At that very time, Pakistan had defeated terrorism completely.
With respect, I will tend to disagree with my colleague. Who has not requested the Taliban's interim government from the last 2 years? All the prime ministers, all the foreign ministers, our previous foreign
State Minister for
foreign
Affairs.
special assistant, Mrs. Respectable Mrs.
Hina
Rabbani Kar, defense minister, ISI chief, previous chief of army staff, present chief of army staff. What else do you want them to request other than this? Do you think out of all these, do we think that out of all these nobody knows the culture of Afghanistan? Nobody knows the cultures of Pakhtun? Nobody knows the cultures of how Afghanistan has been embroiled into the great great game. Okay, it is where we do give leverage to the problems that the interim government is facing. At the same time, in the history of the world, no country has sacrificed for other brotherly country as we have suffered. You know, we have given more than 150,000 people. We have given our next generation in terms of shuhadas of APS. That's why I say that the expectations are always mutual. Where I don't deny this factor that we have to put in order our house in order, where there is a deadly requirement that as I have talked about to put the NECTA into practical application, there is no denying of the fact that what we expect from Talibans, they are not coming up to that expectations, being our brotherly country, and they are not fulfilling what they committed to the international community in Doha Agreement. Well, if the things were that cordial when late Mullah Umer was there, why not now? We have not been able to, we have not cut short in any help to the Afghanistan. Why not they help us? Is it should we keep allowing them to keep attacking our forces, our children, our mosques, and do nothing? Like Gul Bahadur, Maulvi Nazir and all, why they are just across, as you have said, just across the border in Pataka and all, why not they are pushed out? As the interim head of the Afghan government has recently said that they will be sent out of the land. Let's see what happens. But where we want, I would be the first one to say that we have to put it in order. We do not want to interfere in their politics. We do not want to interfere in their culture. We do not want to interfere in their foreign policy till the time there is no cross-border terrorism emanating from Afghanistan.
Right, Mr. Hassan Khan, when we talk about a recent announcement by the Supreme Leader of the interim Afghan authorities declaring that those who are going to involve themselves in cross-border attacks, it is not going to be jihad, rather a war without the permission of the Supreme Leader. So here we see, by this announcement, we see a difference was created between those getting the permission for the Supreme Leader for waging a war, that would be considered jihad, and without permission it won't be. But what about those who won't be taking that permission and still carry out those attacks? There was no mention of accountability in that particular announcement. Why so?
I think as for this announcement was definitely it will have an impact because when the Amarat Islamic Supreme Leaders say something, so definitely those who have what we call it taken care are religious, so definitely they will follow, and it is a very powerful statement, despite the fact it may not be as what I want. There should be, or you or anybody else want, but at least I recognize this statement as a positive steps from Amarat Islam, what I want to say is, look, public speaking on such delicate issues will not resolve it. I think we are engaged. I agree, with Brigadier Saab, that we are engaged with Afghan for the last almost 40, 45 years. In every Pakistani understand the Afghans, the Afghan cultures, and we were having very good diplomats who were not from that area. But it needs the what we call it seriousness of purpose, that how much serious you are to carry on your duties. So I think we need to engage them. We need look. There are problems in everywhere in bordering countries. We have problems with India. We may have problems with Iran. We may have problems with Afghanistan. Afghanistan have problems with their neighbors. Iran have problems with their neighbors. Etc. But a country which focuses on its especially internal stability and internal growth economy, I think we have a lot of others to do. Most of the time, it is very unfortunate that whenever we are talking of Afghanistan, so we are talking of terrorism, we are talking of cross-border issues. I think we need to focus on too much opportunities which we have other than this terrorism, other than this cross-border issue.
Right, Mr. Sherzai. When you already mentioned that nobody should be interfering in when there are human rights issues highlighted. It's not particularly the problem that the other countries are trying to interfere. We see voices coming from within Afghanistan, from that very own culture. For example, a very interesting video is circulating now on the internet as a popular human rights activist and journalist, a female from Afghanistan, interacts with the interim Afghan authorities spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid, saying, let me quote her, "For God's sake, please open the girls' school. It's not possible to have a generation that doesn't go to school unless you solve this. Mujahid, the whole world stands against you, and therefore the people of Afghanistan will suffer." So there is an interesting answer to that one as well by Zabiullah Mujahid. He acknowledged those concerns by the lady, and he also said that I appreciate and will take your opinion to the elders. So what's your understanding of this?
Well, I have discussed this issue informally with some of the Taliban leaders, and they have told me very honestly that we would not stop the girls from education. The only thing that we are against is the co-education. Let the international community provide us the resources so that we can build separate schools, separate universities for the girls and the boys so that they can get education. But at present, they have allowed only up to the primary level, and after primary level they are not allowing because they don't believe in co-education because of the Islamic beliefs. So let them provide with the resources so that they can construct schools, and after providing the resources, if they don't act upon the international community's demand, then everybody would blame them. And secondly, I am not exonerating the Taliban from their responsibilities, of course. Still, as Muslims, and that Pakistan has very cordial relations always with the Taliban leadership. The past Taliban leadership, Pakistan was one of those countries who recognized the government, the Taliban government, and even the present government, we have very cordial relations, and there are spoilers who are trying to spoil these relations. So we should try and negotiate all these issues.
So whose responsibility, Mr. Sherzai, whose responsibility is to deal with the peace spoilers? We know during the Ashraf Ghani's government, there was a nexus between the IDS and Indian RAW. So there was an inclination of then government.
Even during Karzai's time, there was a nexus between.
But the Afghan Taliban didn't seem to have any sort of inclination towards the peace spoilers. So after Afghan Taliban came into power, so isn't it less likely that the peace spoilers would be making headways over there and trying to sabotage whatever the achievements had been?
Well, this is what I would agree with Brigadier Sahib, where he said that it is not only India, there are lots of other spoilers as well in the game. So we should keep an eye on all those spoilers, and at the same try not to give any space to the other forces to spoil our relations with the Taliban.
He said,
we should
but,
try
but
to go
Taliban
ahead.
have also to make, I'm sorry for the interruption, they have also to make, be mindful of this, that they should also be careful about these spoilers of their relations.
Of course, this is what I pointed out, that diplomacy can play a very important role, provided you have people who can talk to them in their language and who understand and on whom they have confidence.
Right.
Well, let me tell you one thing very honestly, whether Brigadier Sahib like it or not, anybody who doesn't speak their language, who speaks Urdu or any other language, the Taliban people would not be comfortable with them.
So, but they had struck a deal with the people speaking completely in English, the US.
Well, they are absolutely happy because they can't speak Pashto. But Pakistan has, when I was Consul General in Kandahar, my ambassador was
Unfortunately, short of time, let me proceed with the discussion. Brigadier Jagir, what's your understanding of this? Zabiullah Mujahid also in that very conversation with Mehbooba Siraj goes on to say, may God find us more mothers like you who force us to give them their rights.
Look, I would say that it is just throwing the blame on the others. Where, as I said, and that there is a responsibility of foreign interim government to this cross-border terrorism, well, they must fulfill. How you can address this immediately? One approach is, which I, in my humble knowledge, knows that the Afghan interim government should take on them by themselves at their own in two steps. First, they should relocate these people of TPP from the border and take it back toward the western side of the Afghanistan. Second, take them on if they are involved in the cross-border terrorism. And the second approach is that we will provide you the information. One is that you take on. The second is, if you do not have the resources to take on, share the intelligence with us and let's have the joint operations over there in Afghanistan. And we don't, I'm not advocating that there should be unilateral action. There should be a combined action of both, and that too because there always come up the point of lack of resources. But the bottom line is that Pakistan cannot afford to move forward with this cross-border terrorism. And the last is, as I have said, that we must, I would recommend this to the government, that we must make NECTA resourceful, make the law, new laws to put them on the mat, and then is the make the capacity building of the police. Police is not substitute of anti-terrorist force. And we have put the anti-terrorist training people on the protection of the ministers and the others. So that's not the job of the anti-terrorist.
Point well taken. Mr. Hassan Khan, what's your understanding of this conversation between Ms. Mehbooba Siraj and Zabiullah Mujahid? She asking him to convey to the elders that opening the girls' school, the response we get from Zabiullah Mujahid says now the Taliban are afraid that if we don't unite the religious scholars with the government, then it could bring down the government. If we don't agree with the solution the scholars advise for us, and if the thing we are going in the wrong direction, this could cause division. So not necessarily we see the voices regarding the violation of human rights, especially the women and girls' rights in Afghanistan, coming from outside, but also voices coming from within. What's your understanding?
I think that conversation between Zabiullah Mujahid and the lady, I think it's a very powerful message, and the commitment of Afghan women. I think what the Taliban, unfortunately, are doing, they are discriminating women on gender basis. If, well, let's say what Mr. Ambassador has said, that they are against co-education. Okay, they are against co-education. It may be not according to their cultures, or maybe some Islamic issues involved there. But at least who is barring who from letting women, let's say you make arrangement for second time or the first time, but where it is written that if you have a choice, so you select men and you discriminate women. So I think the issue is not of education. The issue is of gender apartheidism in Afghanistan, gender discrimination with the women. And I think the ladies has rightly said it, that it is a very strange nation in the world. I think need to be looked after in the museum, that how can you stop a full generation for almost 2 years, not letting them go to school. So I think this is not according to Islam. This is not according to the culture of Afghan. Afghans were far advanced in their, as far education is concerned, in the early 50s and 60s, when King Zahid Shah was ruling, when the Sardar Dawood was ruling Afghan, when the communists were in the regime. So I think it is gender apartheid and it is gender discrimination. Afghan Taliban must act as an Afghan. They have been given this responsibility by God to look after the nation and do not discriminate on the basis of gender, on the basis of ethnic, or on the basis of faith. So I think definitely everybody has concern over it. Maybe we have this a type of a hypocritic, I think, approach from the Taliban side. They want to do it, but they are hostage their own kids, they are hostage their own girls, they are hostage their own women to milk the international community. I think it is totally unacceptable. It is a very uncivilized way of doing things, that you are making your own people hostage.
Pardon for the interjection over here. Unfortunately, we have ran out of time. I'll have to end the show over here. Mr. Hassan Khan, expert Afghan affairs, joining us on Skype. Thank you very much for being with us. Mr. Umer Khan Ali Sherzai, former ambassador, joining us in the studio. Brigadier retired Shahid Jagir, senior analyst. Thank you very much for your time also, for joining us in the studio to discuss this very important topic. With that, we come to the end of today's show. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.